CIUT 89.5, Toronto.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Legends of Canadian Country Music Live, a feature presentation of CIUT-FM 89.5. My name is Duncan Fremlin from the band Whiskey Jack. We're presently on tour with our show Whiskey Jack Presents Stories and Songs of Stompin Tom Connors, a Canadian country music legend, if ever there was one. I'm going to be your host today as we spend a couple of hours with my special guest, Canadian country music legends Larry and Brian from the Good Brothers. But I don't know about you guys, but when I think of the Good Brothers, I think of this song. That first song you heard was Fox on the Run by the Good Brothers, a hit for them in 1976 that resonates today. The second tune you heard was the only song that Whiskey Jack really charted. It was back in 1979. It was Southbound Passenger Train. And we have to thank our old friend from CFGM Radio up in Richmond Hill from the old days, Gord Ambrose, for playing the dickens out of that song. He really took a liking to it, so we appreciate that. Larry and Brian Good, welcome. I want to give the listeners a bit of a Coles Note history of the Good Brothers, but before we get into that, I want to let everybody know that the three of us have a stack of discs sitting here. And some of it's on vinyl, and we're going to put them on the old turntable and tell some cool stories about why they're all important over the next couple of hours. And another reason why we're sitting here is that Whiskey Jack and the Good Brothers are getting all pumped up for the very first show that we've ever played together.
It's about time.
It's about time. It's only taken 41 years. The date is Friday, June 15th, and at the Regent Theatre in Picton. So if you're listening to this as a podcast, that's June 15th. 2018, just in case, it might be 2020 and you hear this.
That will be an historic date.
It will be a great date, and we're going to have a Canadian country music blast on Friday night. So the idea for the Picton show, if I can just sort of set the table here a little bit, it's loosely based on the old country music caravans that used to tour the country back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I used to sit around and listen to Stompin Tom and Graham Townsend tell some great stories, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But so the promoter, Sean Pilot, and I had this idea to let's try one of these things and see, first of all, we're going to have a heck of a good time.
Exactly.
And hopefully the fans will really appreciate this is the real deal. Like you're real, right? You guys are.
The last time I checked.
Yeah. No, I just said this isn't the Good Brothers tribute. You guys aren't going to dress up as the Good Brothers.
We haven't reached that point where people want to be like us yet.
No. We don't make that much money.
So the show is going to be. It's going to be. They're going to hear "Fox on the Run" by the band that made it famous. They're going to hear. Hopefully, Hot Knife Boogie.
They're all on our set list. We've got. In fact, you'll be hearing them today. So.
Oh, that's great. I wonder if you could just give me a sort of a Coles Note history of when did you start and.
I'll give you a quick one in a nutshell. Yeah, well,
this is Brian Good talking.
Oh, yeah, my twin brother and I, of course, started from birth. We were womb mates, you might say. But it didn't take long for us to pick up an instrument because our parents, our mom and dad, were both musical, both from New Brunswick, East Coasters, and it was a Saturday night was always jam night at the Good family house. And that's pretty much how it started. And we had no idea we'd be bringing our music from our kitchen in Richmond Hill to the stage in Picton.
So was that maritime music, folk music, bluegrass
it
music?
It was folk, country, bluegrass. Then Elvis came along, and our mother, like every other woman in North America and around the world, fell in love with Elvis. So then we switched to early rock and roll. To the rock and roll of the 50s.
Are you talking about the family or the boys?
Talking about the family and the boys too. I mean, we tried to emulate Elvis and Buddy Holly and the likes when we were young, but then we came back to nest in good old country music, and when we started recording, we realized that was our greatest love was in country, folk, and bluegrass.
I wanted to, at some point in time this afternoon, hopefully, I wanted to chat about the different categories because you guys have crossed over. There was a period where, we go to Carlisle and see you play and there'd be an auto harp there'd be a banjo, there'd be so it's sort of really getting close to being rocky, and yet
It was right after Carlisle. We kind of went saxophone, keyboards, heaven forbid, and in fact our music changed somewhat dramatically from that, but it was still had a country flavor to it.
Yeah.
But a good example, a perfect example is we just did our 30 years, 40 tours of Europe. And the man who brought us over, the Kees de Haan, he's our manager and agent in Holland. He saw us first play at Lulu's in Kitchener, and we were loaded with electric guitar, saxophone, keyboards, and all that. We came off the stage, and he was checking us out to see if he would bring us over to Europe, and he said, "Not interested. You guys are not country enough for my my taste and for my audience." So we just sort of grinned and bared it, and 2 years later he came back and saw us. Now we had shed the rock and roll thing. We'd realized that our strength was in what I just said, country, folk, and bluegrass. So we went back to that, and he hired us right away to go to Europe. And since then, like I said, it's been 40 tours later.
So we're going to play Brown Eyed Girl now. Is that
That was
during
our
the
rock.
rock? Is that during the rock period? So
Yes.
let's give the next two a listen, Mike. Oh, we're sitting here in the studio feeling pretty darn proud after listening to that song, I'll tell you. So that set was the Brown Eyed Girl during the rocky part of the Good Brothers history, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And the second song was, it's called It's Canada Day Up Canada Way by Stompin Tom Connors, and that features a collaboration that Whiskey Jack did with him back in 1993. He called us and said, would you come into the studio and record an album and go on tour with me? And I said, you darn right we would. So that's sort of like, I like listening to that song because it's really Whiskey Jack with Stompin Tom singing lead and us singing harmony in the background. So we have copies of that album when we're on tour with our show Stories and Song Stompin Tom. This show is partially to celebrate the legends of Canadian country music, but it's also to talk about the show coming up in Picton on June 15th, 2018 at the Regent Theatre with the Good Brothers and Whiskey Jack presents Stories and Songs of Stompin Tom. Before we get back into some more songs, Brian, can you talk a little bit about that rock era that the Good Brothers went through? Because I'm one of the ones who I was in the Alma Combo in the early 70s, and I was one of those fools dancing to your music.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
one of those.
yeah, I mean, John Allen was on fiddle. You guys rock, man.
Absolutely.
It was like you do 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
You'd pack the place.
Yeah, it was quite
We'd drink copious amounts of beer and go home so happy.
Quite
and
an
then
era.
we wake up one day, and now you've got saxes and electric guitars, and what the hell happened, man?
Well, the Alma Combo happened for starters. That was a downtown crowd. It wasn't exactly what you call a rural bunch down there. But also, what happened was our record company, they had a lot to say in what we recorded.
Which one was that?
That would be RCA. We did our first album on RCA, and that was an independent because we did the album first and then took it to RCA, and they bought it. They didn't buy it, but they put us on their label, and so the next album. Now, even on our first album, they took 2 songs off that we had originally put on and put a couple of, like Midnight Flight and a couple of other rocking type things, because they would just wanted to appeal to the masses, of course. And then the second album we did called Pretty Ain't Good Enough was produced by Larry Brown, L. Russell Brown. He wrote Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree, Candida, Knock 3 Times on the Ceiling, all those great hits for Tony Orlando and Don. And so he and Billy Vera, and he was another performer from the States. They co-produced it, and they were both more on the, not so much, as you know, those songs I just mentioned by Tony Orlando wasn't exactly a rocker, but he was a kind of a soft rock, kind of doing popular songs of the day. So our management felt that maybe this could be a nice combination. It could push us over the top. I mean, and please our record company as well.
What, he wanted to make you into Barry Manilow?
Yeah.
Which one was going to sing lead on this?
Well, Larry Manilow.
Yeah, sure.
But no, I actually some of the songs were very much like Barry Manilow's songs. Like one Larry sang
Actually,
called "No
yeah.
Place," which
No place like home.
But at any rate, that started us off in this kind of more of a rock pop venture.
Did you have any say in this?
Oh, we did, because they let us do some of our own material. But we back in the day, back in the 70s, we had very little say. We were happy to have a label.
And they were ponying money up.
And they were putting
spending
up money, and they were
that's the
taking.
trade-off.
We were down in New York, and we were in Nashville, and we were recording in all these places. We weren't footing the bill for that. Our record company was, so they had some say. But we after the RCA experience, we started to fall back into our. Actually, it took a little while, but it took us 3 or 4 albums before we kind of came to our senses. Now we were more independent. We moved to Savannah Records, which was Brian Ferryman,
Right.
and he had Michelle Wright. He had One Horse Blue.
That was out of Brian was out of Nashville too, wasn't he?
He moved to Nashville.
Right.
He started in Toronto. So then we went back to more country. But we weren't doing bluegrass as much,
Right.
or folk. That didn't come until later when we formed our own
So
label.
when you were traveling in the States, were you using American musicians, or did you bring your own band?
We
down
brought
for
our
it?
own band.
And who was in that band?
To begin with, it was Danny McBride was playing guitar. We had Peter Davidson on drums. We had
You had Red Shea for a while?
Red Shea played guitar. He went from Gord to the Tommy Hunter show, and then he played with us for a couple of years. That recording of that you heard of Fox on the Run was Red Shea playing lead, and that was live at Ontario Place.
Right. Who was your drummer? Do you remember?
The drummer was Peter Davidson,
Okay.
but we had guys recording with us too. Whitey Glenn, I don't know if you know
No,
Whitey.
no, don't know that.
He was with Bush, and he played with Dominic Triano.
Right.
Dominic Triano, even during our rock
Yeah.
day, played
Wow.
guitar
Wow.
with us.
Yeah.
So it was quite.
Oh, you must have had some great gigs.
We
there.
had some.
Oh,
We had
some
Mo,
gigs.
Mo Kaufman on Dominic
I saw that.
Triano.
I
Mo
saw that on one of
Kaufman.
the-
All
yeah.
these great guys were playing with all these Toronto guys. Were playing with us. It was quite a time for us. But it wasn't really what we were.
Yeah.
It was what the record
So
company expected of us.
today you manage yourselves today.
We're
is
managed- we are
Well, we
self-
managed to be here, and that's a big thing.
that's okay.
We
got
managed
that.
we managed to find this place.
Yes.
So
Right, and
No,
and now it took you 15 minutes to figure out the parking.
Well,
but you
it's
know,
okay.
you don't live south of Steele, so
That's
we,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
I
we
understand.
don't
that.
have to deal with all this technology like pay to park.
I've been running out and feeding the meter every 5 seconds. That's
Yeah.
why you haven't hearing my voice.
Right,
so
right.
Just so
I
you know.
guess he's got all the money, eh, Brian?
Yeah, right.
Larry's
He's
got
got-
all the money.
yeah.
I got all the pocket change.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So, but anyway, that's it. That's a pretty big nutshell. But
Yeah.
that's and then we when we formed our own Hogtown Records, then we went to what we did best, and
Right.
not only original songs, but we went back to bluegrass, folk, and
Right.
you'll hear more of that
Right.
a little later.
We took control.
Yeah. Well, you also took control at a time after you had learned so much about the business. We had control in our career right from the get-go, but we didn't know that much about the business, and we learned. It took us way longer to learn probably what you guys learned in a year working for a record company. Like Intune Management, the guy named Larry Gregson out of Nashville signed us for a year. And we thought, oh, this is great. We got Nashville management
Yeah.
and the whole thing. Well, he didn't tell us that we had to come to the table with $20,000
Yeah.
to do the job. Like
Ouch.
we had no idea.
Yeah.
And so after a year, we kind of called him up and said, this isn't working. He said, yeah, it's not working for me either. So see you later, alligator.
Yeah.
But it took that long to figure out this business takes a lot of cash to make a career. And
It
a
does.
lot of money's been spent on you guys.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that I love about you guys, you've always been, as I've been a fan all these years, you've always been incredibly entertaining. So I want to play a couple of songs that sort of, I like to think that Whiskey Jack also emphasized the entertainment
You do,
part. So
yeah.
these two
absolutely.
songs hopefully will tell that story.
CIUT 89.5, Toronto.
Yeah, it's a class station, folks. You hear nothing but the most sophisticated music here on CIUT-FM 89.5. That song you just heard was, we call it Druelling Banjos. Whiskey Jack recorded that many years ago during our kids era. We had young kids, and we toured singing kids songs, and that was one of the reason I played that, guys, was the entertainment element of the music business. We all aspire to write the hit song and be the great hot picker and the best musician in the city and all that kind of stuff, and it gets right down to it. The audience, I thought that the audience was really more interested in going home with a smile on their face. So
Can I ask you a question?
absolutely.
Did you have a deal with a mouthwash company?
No.
You didn't?
No.
Well, you
no.
should have.
No, we had a deal with Johnny Walker. We gargled with whiskey.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you know,
Perfect.
I know what you're alluding to here. You can write songs. You can spend all of your time and energy trying to write the most sophisticated, sensitive love song or road song, and you'll record it, and then you'll write something like the song that was just played, the Good Brothers' Honk on Bobo. It's a ridiculous little novelty tune. And what song is the crowd hollering for in the audience?
Yeah.
They want Honk on Bobo. They don't want the
Go figure.
Yeah.
well, it's entertainment.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example of that. We were playing at the Art Center this is years ago in Ottawa, and of all people, Loudon Wainwright was opening for us, and he had just had this monster hit with Dead Skunk in the Middle of the Road. He refused to play it, and the audience booed him at the end of his show because he wouldn't. And he even said, "I'm not going to play it because it's a piece of poop." And he should have thought of that before he recorded it. And that's one lesson that we learned. If you're going to record a song, you own it, and you're going to have people asking for it. So
Yeah, that's true.
be ready to perform it.
That's true. There's bluegrass is famous for the picking. We all want to be great pickers, and we spend hours in closet all by ourselves.
I still do.
You still want to be. I want
still
to
wanna
be
be a
too,
great
Larry.
picker.
These are the two banjo players talking, by the way. We're desperate to be good pickers, but you go home and you play these great these hot licks and everything. You get in front of the audience, and it's the jokes and it's the beautiful harmony singing that the Good Brothers are famous for. That it's really gonna
thank you.
touch them emotionally. Is it not?
Thank you so much.
No, I
I'm
take
talking
that-
about your third part.
Oh, you are?
Larry. Yes.
Well, thank you so
Not at
much.
all.
Thank you.
I
I'm going to
take-
work out over here in the corner.
Okay.
I take that as a compliment. I really do.
No,
That's entertainment. There's one thing about being a masterful musician. Some masterful musicians are not entertainers,
Right.
and they can bore an audience to death. But we are gifted with that, the gift of gab. My brother Bruce takes care of that quite nicely, and I'd say moderate musicians at best. But the entertainment factor, I think, is what really counts. And I've had accomplished musicians come up to us and say, "Boy, I mean, you really grab an audience." I mean, and that's the whole idea.
I think
it's
an audience. I read somewhere Stephen Fry, the great comedian and author, wrote a book about being an entertainer, and he said the audience wants to feel relaxed. They want you, the entertainer, to be totally in control. Then they can relax.
That's right.
They can sit in their. So if you're, somebody said to me after a show in Huntsville last year, "You guys own the stage." That is the ultimate compliment to me.
It is.
You're right.
But the other part of that you guys are really good at is that there's always a bit of tension. You're a little zany. You never quite know what's going to come out of your brother's mouth. And this is Stompin Tom as well. Tom could come out there and make everybody feel like they're in his kitchen. I mean, that was just his way.
Exactly.
But after he just sort of lured them into his kitchen, then all of a sudden he'd do some crazy or say some absolutely bizarre thing, and they'd be in stitches on that.
Yeah.
To me is the package. That's the entertainment package right there.
Well, with brothers too, people are, and we actually argue on stage.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
We do not.
We do so. Anyway.
Bruce warned me this was going to happen.
Yeah, I'll bet you do. But people love it because it's kind of like you say. It's kind of like sitting around the kitchen, just picking and talking and telling stories, and you can agree or disagree. And sometimes I tell him I tell him he talks too much, and
I'm just trying to imagine being on the road with my two brothers for as long as you. I can't imagine.
It
I
ain't
love
natural.
my brothers dearly, but
Yeah, it
there's
ain't
no
natural.
way I could do this. How
That's
did
true.
this happen? How did you guys make this
You know
happen?
what? It's
Music.
because we are brothers, and that's first and foremost.
Right.
We're brothers.
This
and
is
I
Larry
think,
talking, by
Yes,
the
it
way.
is. I'm sorry. But, I think that has been our secret as well, is the fact that we are brothers. We're family first, and that's what been our success, No matter what, if we were playing music or not.
But
we'd
not
still-
all brothers are like that. Just look
No.
at the
I
Everly
guess-
brothers. They couldn't
Yeah.
I
stand
guess
each
you're
other.
right about that, yeah.
No,
But-
we're,
but-
we're very lucky.
But
Yeah.
I'll tell you, if this
guess
was me,
so.
if you guys are my two brothers,
Yeah.
I'd want to be paid more than you two. So do you want to talk about how that works out?
That's been my secret.
Larry,
now you know.
You want to
my
tell
se-
us
well,
do you make more money than the other two?
Well, that's my secret.
No.
No, I'm just
we've
kidding.
We've always, it's been a split, always.
Three-way.
Everything
Is
is
that right?
three-way.
Three-way.
so it doesn't matter how much alimony one guy has to
I
pay
know.
over the other guy.
No,
problem?
you're on
No.
your own.
Three-
You're on your.
Yeah.
Larry and I are on our own with the alimony.
In fact, I think I have the.
Bruce has been married.
You win.
I win the award.
Bruce has been married for 50 years.
Yeah.
So his alimony has been nil.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about
So-
yours, Brian?
Oh, it's I've managed to.
Okay.
And
to
mine is
cover
big.
it.
Mine's
Okay,
big too.
Big too.
so-
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. We'll take up a collection a little bit later.
Please.
Okay. What I want to get into now is another.
I take debit.
I'm sure you do. Is another topic that is of interest to listeners, I'm sure, and that is your special relationship with Gordon Lightfoot. And I remember buying a Lightfoot album many years ago, and I look in the back, and there's how did the Good Brothers get that? How did they get? Why are they on this? So, do you want to talk a little bit about how that came to be?
Well, we've known Gordon for over 40 years now, and we met him through Red Shea, his guitar player at the time, and that would have been back in 1969. Oh my Lord!
Even earlier, maybe.
That's almost 50 years. So, at any rate, we met him at the airport. Red was there, and we were James and the Good Brothers at the time. Larry was still in school. We were on our way to San Francisco, and I don't know where they were going, but Red introduced us to Gord, and it became a relationship that has lasted for, like I said, almost 50 years. He has been a mentor to us. He's supported us. He's produced some of our stuff. We've performed. We've toured North America with him, Canada and the U.S. He's been a good friend and almost another brother. And to this day, he comes out to our shows, and he's there for us when And it's just been a marvelous relationship that is ongoing. And
What have you learned from him?
his advice to us in the earlier days was to always save your receipts. That was a joke.
Yeah.
But no, he did. In the early days, he said, "You just come up with 15 good songs that are flawless." He said, "And you're on your way."
Yeah.
He said, "Those first 15 songs," and he said, "And write." He said, "Write your own songs. Don't ever give up on yourself. Just keep on writing," which we did. And some of the stuff that we wrote ourselves weren't the hits that the Good Brothers enjoyed, but it certainly gave us that experience, and it turned us into songwriters. In fact, we've written songs with Doug here, your guitar player.
Yeah.
And there are so many great. And we started out with just Bruce and I writing together. Well, actually individually. Mm-hmm. And then we said, let's put our heads together and write together. And so later on, we started writing together. But it was some of the best advice we could ever get. And then he went beyond advice, and he helped us.
Well, he's been a great supporter of our show as well. A few years ago, I contacted the Right Honourable Adrienne Clarkson and asked her to guest on our Toronto show. This is about four or 5 years ago, and just as our tour was kind of getting some legs, and she did that the first year, which was I think 4 years ago, and then she said, "I'm going to try and get my good friend Gordon Lightfoot to come the following year," which she did. So he came to Hugh's room. He got up and played a song and had told a nice long story about his afternoon up at Stompin Tom's house in Georgetown when he fell off the wagon after I don't know how many years, 23 years or something. You cannot sit with Tom and not drink beer. I don't care who you are. And anyway, and then he came to another show. So he's been this is a very besides the fact that he's probably influenced an entire generation of singers, songwriters, Canadians. I don't know if there's a Canadian who's had such a profound effect on so many people as Gordon Lightfoot.
And you see that every year at Hughes Room when they hold that.
Yeah, incredible.
It's an amazing event. And I believe it's happening again this year.
I think so.
Lightfoot tribute. I'm not sure of the venue for sure, but...
And I think you guys had a hit with one of his songs. And why don't we play that, Mike, the next two songs? That was Whiskey Jack performing Song for a Winter's Night, and the first one you heard was a 1980 Good Brother hit called Alberta Bound, which they are going to be playing at the Picton Regent Theatre on Friday, June 15th, 2018, as part of Legends of Canadian Country Music Live. It's a big show that's going to be happening, featuring Whiskey Jack Presents Stories and Songs of Stompin Tom and the Good Brothers. That band, that version of Whiskey Jack, like you gentlemen, we've gone through various... we started out as a 4-piece acoustic act and tried to kind of drain the bank account doing that. And then we... over the years have added instruments and musicians, and that particular recording, the Winter's Night recording, that featured a female vocalist that joined us, a friend of the band's for many years. Her name was Arlene Zox. It's the late Arlene Zox. She died a few years ago. Wonderful singer. Bob McNiven on guitar. He is my partner for 40 years. He's just retired last fall. And he was the guitar player on that and harmony singer. Howard Willett on harmonica, again, was with Whiskey Jack for a very long time. Great harmonica player. Steve Claude, I don't know if you ever got to speak to or to play with Steve. He was he died a few years ago also. He's amazing accordion player. Michelle Joseph on drums, and a longtime bass player for Whiskey Jack. Greg Street, who was the 5-time Bluegrass Bass Player of the Year. So he joined us in 79 or 80, and he was 16 or 17 years old. He had to get permission from mom and dad to get into the bars. Yeah. So he had to carry around a letter.
We had a bass player like that.
Right. Yeah. And then between sets, he'd have to go and sit out in the lobby and go up to the room or whatever. Yeah. And but boy, what a bass player! I just saw him perform with the Klezmer Band last week, and just he's one of these bass players that he's not a guitar player who became a bass player. Yeah. He's not a, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he thinks like a bass player. It's just quite a. Anyway, one of the.
Well, that's a great version, by the way. I like
yeah.
It.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Very pretty.
So I was wondering, these days, we were talking about this earlier, how our audience they love the music, and they love, you guys are playing the music of our life, right? I mean, most of us have made out in the back seat of a Mustang to your tunes. But I'm wondering,
everybody except me.
You don't put on your own tune when you make it out?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, you just can't afford a Mustang.
That's a great way to kill the mood.
I just wonder, is there a crazy road story you can think of to share with folks?
There's many, I'm sure, but I'm saving it for the book. But I'll tell you one, just off the top of my head. We were in Saskatchewan. We were driving one of those all-night drives in the motorhome at the time. Yeah. And we stopped. We made a pit stop, as we call it, and then we carried on our jolly way. This has got to be about 2 o'clock in the morning, and suddenly there's an RCMP. We can see the light behind us flashing, and it's getting closer and closer. And finally, when he gets to us, we were his target. He pulled us over, and we said, "Okay, hide the drugs." No. Anyway,
what, the RCMP guy said that?
Yeah.
No.
No. We pulled over, and he came up to the window and he said, "Do you guys happen to be missing anything?" And we said, "Missing something? No, I don't think so." And he said, "Well, where's your drummer?" He said, "He's back there sleeping." Well, that's what we thought.
No way.
He wasn't. He was at the last service center we were at.
We left him.
We left him well, he didn't tell us that he got out of it. He was sleeping in the first place, and we went our way.
So
and
it's his fault, eh, Brian?
So absolutely
is that the story
his
of your
fault.
life? Yeah.
And I can even take it a step further.
Okay.
why did he call the RCMP? I mean, of all people.
Yeah.
Knowing what he knew, what was
Knowing
going
what
on
he
in
knew.
that
But
book.
it was way before cell phones, so there was no
Right.
other. He didn't know what else to do,
Right.
and so he did the right thing.
Right.
I mean, he could have called a tow truck and he
Right.
could have pulled us over too.
Right.
But as it turned out, it was a happy ending. We had to go back and get him. The drummer wasn't with him. The cop was just telling us,
Yeah.
you better go back if you need a drummer. We said,
Yeah.
we don't really need a drummer that much. Just kidding, drummers out
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Can I tell you just a quick RCMP story? We're cruising through Manitoba on our way to Boggy Creek festival up near Riding Mountain National Park, and so one of the local musicians is giving us a ride up, and it's a beat up old Ford, and like we're a bunch of long hairs cruising along the Highway 1, and if there's a car that's going to be pulled over, man, it's going to be our car because we had anyway RCMP pulls us over and makes us all sit in the ditch, and he goes through the car, and then we get back in the car and we're cruising along, and one of the guys turns and says, "What happened to my chunk of hash?" So he had stuck it between the seat, and I guess the RCMP guy had taken it, and
he let you go?
He had no intention of. So there you go. I know
I've
that's
got-
a terrible,
I love that
That's a
story.
terrible.
Have we
thing,
got
isn't it?
time for another?
One more.
It's
for
a
another
terrible
question.
theft.
This was James and the Good Brothers. Being as you opened the floodgates with the hash.
The drug store.
So we were James and the Good Brothers. We were on our way to the University of Syracuse to play at a club, a coffee house at the university. And down in Gananoque, we were crossing the border, and of course they pulled us over right away. They searched the car, and as they were searching the car, the smell of hashish just overtook everything. I mean, we could smell it everywhere, and these guys were in that car. There was like 4 of them going through the car and through the linings and under the seats, and Bruce and James are looking at each other, and I'm looking at them and saying, "What's going on here?" And James said, "Perhaps it's my patchouli oil." That was big at the border guy said, "No, we know the difference between hashish and patchouli oil." Anyway, I'll try to shorten this. We finally got through. We were there about 3 hours. Finally got through, and I said, "Pull over, guys." We had a strict rule: you didn't carry any pot or anything across the border. But a smart guy, yours truly, thought that he'd fool everybody. And what I did was I took a little piece of tin foil with that little piece of hash, and I put it between I took the dome light cover off, and I put it behind the little fuse light, and I thought nobody's going to look there, and they didn't look there. But while the door was open, they were searching.
It was
Heating
that
up.
fuse light was heating up that piece of
Wow.
tin foil, and it was just like somebody was smoking a pipe right there. But we got through. Well, first of all, I said, "Pull over, look what I got." And they said, "Oh, that's terrific. You just broke a rule, Buster." And if there was a fine in the day, I would have been fined at the time.
Well-
or worse, I'd have been busted.
I just want all the kids listening here today to pay close attention to Uncle Brian's little story about
Yes.
sticking a piece of hash in the light. No,
Hey, in what, 3 weeks, this will be all a moot point
do
anyway.
you think hash will be legal too in 3
I
weeks?
don't know about that, but
Yeah?
we can hope.
We've kind of changed the lyrics to Bud the Spud for a few weeks. It's it's Spud the Bud from the BC mud, rolling down the highway smiling. These buds smell great in the back of Spud's crate, and they're from Vancouver Island. Now from Chemainus town to Cowichan Bay, they load up the pot. Trudeau says it's okay. They hop in the cab and they're off with their prime marijuana. They got to catch the boat to make Nanaimo town as they hit up the island highway line. Through the town of Mill Bay, they're flying high with another big load of the reefer. That's a little taste of what we're going
That's
to be
great.
playing.
I love that.
Well,
We'll play that on Friday. How's that?
I think
Good.
we got the hot knife boogie coming up soon.
Oh,
anyway, so,
fantastic.
so that pretty well.
Okay, we'll talk
underlines it.
about a little bit later. We'll talk about the mother-in-law coming over and wondering what those burn marks on the knives were. So we'll get to that. So just before we get to the next 2 songs, can you tell me a little bit about some of the other musicians who you're going to bring with you on Friday? Who's going to be Who's going to be playing with you?
Well, the incomparable and the overworked Al Cross will be playing with both of us.
And underpaid, absolutely.
Overworked and underpaid.
Yes,
Al
yes,
Cross,
yeah.
a magnificent drummer and terrific guy.
Yeah.
He'll be with us. We have Wayne Ferguson on fiddle.
Oh, wow.
We have
Mandolin,
fiddle and mandolin. Pete Sisk on bass, stand-up bass. Larry on banjo, me on guitar, and Bruce on dobro and Ottawa.
Fantastic.
And fun for everyone.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's going to be such a blast. We are bringing myself on banjo, Douglas John Cameron on guitar, the 5-time Canadian bluegrass fiddle champion Randy Morrison on fiddle.
Oh, Randy, great.
Eric Jackson from the Humber River Valley Boys and Swing Street. Terry Sumption's band. He played with Terry for many years. He's playing
Excellent.
bass with us. And we get back to that Al Cross, who's doing double duty on Friday night. So it's going to be a heck of a show and a heck of a bunch of musicians. So let's play these next couple of tunes. The second tune you're going to hear is going to feature that Randy Morrison on fiddle.
CIUT 89.5 Toronto.
And you are listening to Legends of Canadian Country Music Live, a feature presentation at this fine station. If you too would like a show like this, all you have to do is be a supporter, pony up some hard cash, give them a call, donate, give them your credit card, and you too can have a show just like this. My name is Duncan Fremlin. I play in a band called Whiskey Jack. We're presently on tour with our show, Whiskey Jack Presents Stories and Songs of Stompin Tom Connors. And that is a Canadian country music legend, if ever there was one. We are going to be performing a show on Friday, June 15th, 2018, at the Regent Theatre in Picton, Ontario. And our guests, the stars of that show, will be the Good Brothers. They are my guests here this afternoon at the studios here at the Hart House in the University of Toronto. And we've just been having a great old time here chatting about the Canadian music business and telling some stories that probably we shouldn't be telling, but we're of the age where we don't really care anymore, do we, guys?
No,
Well said.
no, we don't.
Yeah, I mean, I wear goofy hats, and I could care less. You'd be amazed at what I walk out of the house looking like.
And I'm just goofy.
You're just
so
goofy.
It works.
You'd
Got
be
nothing to
goofy
prove
forever.
anymore, yeah.
So I know you guys are connected to some of the I know Stompin Tom was a big supporter of the military, and we recorded a song with him, which we'll play shortly, called Blue Berets. But do you want to talk a little bit about your connection?
Absolutely. The Good Brothers have joined up with the Wounded Warriors, and we have, in the last 4 years, we've been going to Saskatchewan and Alberta for what is called Wounded Warriors Weekend, which is a weekend of fishing, hunting, golf, and just a time when all these amazing people who served our country, and not only Canadians, but there are Americans and Brits and Australians who also attend. And we're there as entertainers, and we just give of our time. It's a great weekend to see these people and to see them enjoy the things they love so much, and to be a part of it. And these are all people who are affected by PTSD and that have served. And it's quite a moving experience in Saskatchewan and Alberta. And their bus is met wherever they go in every small town. It's like a parade. People line the streets with the Canadian flags, and it's quite an event. So that is just one small thing that we do. We're all members of our local legion, and I suggest anybody else who isn't that they do the same thing. It's a great feeling, and it's a great cause. But just say in the last 6-7 years, we wrote a song. We actually wrote it for our father. I don't know if it's queued up or not.
It is. I think it is An Old Man's Tears.
An Old Man's Tears.
Yes, we're going to hear that next. Yeah.
And the idea, the premise of that song came when our dad, who was from New Brunswick, he moved to Toronto in the early 40s. He was on his way out west, in fact, to work in the oil fields, because back then there was rumor of oil out there. But he made it as far as Toronto. And somehow he went into the old Palace Hotel down on King Street, And it was right across the street from Massey Ferguson, the old Massey Ferguson plant. And they stopped there for a night, and he was offered a part-time job, and so they thought they'd stay in Toronto for a while. Well, he stayed at that job for 35 years. But we took him to Western Canada, the first time he'd been outside of Ontario, at least west of Ontario. And when we got to the Rocky Mountains, we pulled over to one of those scenic outlooks, and his eyes filled with tears, and he said, I'm just thinking, and at first I said, Dad, I know how you feel when you see the Rocky Mountains for the first time. I had the same emotional feeling. And he said, yeah, that's part of it, but I'm thinking of my friends and some of my family who went off to war, and they didn't even know what they were fighting for. They were fighting for a few acres in New Brunswick somewhere, and they'd never been out of their hometown or province either. So that moment stayed with us, and a few years later we wrote this song. It's called An Old Man's Tears, and it's something that's very close to us because it is about the service and it is about our father. So
Let's hear it. Old Man's Tears. That was the first song you heard in that set, and the second one was Blue Berets by Stompin Tom Connors. We have a special guest joining us at the table. We have been on tour with the Stompin Tom show for quite some time, and every once in a while, in the early days, we were joined by our good friend Douglas John Cameron, who would get up and sing a song called K.D. Lang that Tom wrote, and as only Leonard Cohen would sing it.
Yes.
Became a big hit. And then next thing you know, he's playing mandolin with us. Then next thing you know, he's playing guitar with us. And now he is a permanent member of Whiskey Jack. Now, let me just say that there have been times over the last few years where people have come up after the show and said to me, is that Douglas John Cameron on stage? And I said, yeah, why? And they say, because he had a hit song back in the 80s called Mona with the Children. And I remember that song. And so Douglas John Cameron, would you give us sort of the Coles Note version of how that song came to be? And let me just also point out that Douglas is a 2-time Juno Award nominee. And one of them is because of this song.
Well, so Mona with the Children came about because in the, I would say, late 70s or early 80s, I was a member of the Baha'i Faith. And this story was the story of a young girl from Iran who was a Baha'i. And she was imprisoned with a number of other women, and I'm not sure the exact dates of this, and eventually executed because of her faith. And at the time, I was doing quite a bit of music inside the Baha'i community. I was playing around Canada and a little bit in the States, and I also did some touring in the Caribbean, which was very nice in the wintertime.
Is that when you were you had management at that time and the record
No,
contract? This was before that?
It was sort of around that time, but then I had a friend at the time named Jack Lenz, who was a music producer here in Toronto, and he had heard the story of this young girl, which there wasn't much to the story when it first came out of Iran, just that she was 16, she'd been arrested, and she'd been executed. And he asked me to write a song about it. And I thought, you can't write a song about that. That's a terrible thing. Like, how could you possibly write that song? And at the time, I was living in Peterborough, and I was walking down Water Street in Peterborough, and I was right in front of the police station. I'll never forget this. And I was stepping off the curb to cross the road. And for some reason, I got the idea that this girl, Mona, would be dancing. I don't know why I got that idea. I just got that idea. And so then I went home afterwards and kind of put together this little song. And later, much later on in the process of recording, in fact, just the day after recording, I think the lead vocal here in Toronto, this is now in 1985, a letter came from Mona's sister. And in the letter, she had visited Mona in prison before she was executed, and Mona had asked that her sister pray that they go dancing to their execution. And I remember, being a songwriter and amongst songwriters, I mean, I always felt like if I could get an idea, if there was some kind of idea that I could get, or an image, or just something that would you know that would be worth translating to people or communicating to people, then I could probably write a song. And I thought, well, there's an idea, and thank goodness that idea kind of arranged, and so there it is in the song.
So from that, you had management by who?
Well, the same guy, Jack Lenz, at the time was my management, and we recorded the song and made a video, and there was no intention of it being a commercial thing. I didn't have a record deal. I wasn't, and at the time, in fact, I was thinking of going back to university, because I'd tried to get a record deal and I couldn't make any headway. And the day they shot the video, Bernie Finkelstein from True North Records got wind of it, called and said he wanted to put out the single, and he said, but you got to have an album. And so we had to go in and make an album. I'd been working on demos and things, so that became the album. And the song was released July the 9th, 1985.
That's pretty heady stuff.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was an amazing story. I traveled across Canada and a little bit in the States, and I saw how the video affected people, and I saw how the story affected people, and especially a lot of young people, people Mona's age.
And you received a Juno nomination from that.
I was nominated as most promising male vocalist.
Yeah, no,
in
congratulations.
1986.
That's pretty awesome. That's
It is
pretty
awesome.
Yeah.
Incredible story.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
It was an amazing time. I didn't, you know, after that, I didn't have the sort of career that maybe I'd hoped to have, but certainly that moment was something
Well,
amazing.
Douglas, we are going to change that now. Douglas John Cameron, lead singer, Stories and Songs of Stompin' Tom. You're going to hear a couple of songs right now that really show you the talent that's sitting here at this table. Mike, would you put those on, please? That was TTC Skedaddler. And if anyone out there knows what a skedaddler is, or a big red rattler, we would appreciate you calling the station and letting us know. Lead singer was Douglas John Cameron. You're listening to CIUT-FM 89.5. We're sitting here. The name of the show is Canadian Country Music Legends Live, and our guests are the Good Brothers, Brian and Larry Good, and Douglas John Cameron. My name is Duncan Fremlin, the leader of Whiskey Jack Presents Stories and Songs of Stompin' Tom. Do you have another station ID you want to stick in there, Mike?
89.5 Toronto.
All right. So I just wanted to mention one other thing too now, Douglas. I know that you had a second Juno nomination for a very special song, and I believe that we don't even have a copy of that. I'm really sorry we
No,
didn't
I
get to
should've-
play that today,
Yeah.
because we all have had ants in our pants.
That's right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your kid's background?
In the 90s, I started writing songs and music for television shows, and one of the first shows that I worked on was a show for Treehouse TV when Treehouse TV launched, and the show was called Ants in Your Pants. And we got the job the last week of August. They went to air September 15th, and I had to write 20 songs, and I had to have 10 of them finished by the time they went to air, and there was a bit more time. And Ants in Your Pants was the title song. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. It was a video show for preschool kids. And what it turned out, though, was, and I was in some of the videos, and I was, you know, because I'd written the songs, there were other people that got to be in them as well. Turned out the show was on the air 4 times a day, 7 days a week, and this was Shaw Cable. Now, Shaw Cable was not in Toronto, but it was almost everywhere else. It was, because I think it was in Richmond Hill, and it was all kinds of other places. So I had no idea what was happening. And at some point, someone said, well, you should go do a live show and sing some of these songs. So I think it was up near Richmond Hill, because I at the time was living in Richmond Hill. And I go out to do this show, and everybody knows the songs. And I'm thinking to myself, how do they know these songs? And I realized it was the power of television. And so I realized that I'd written a second hit song, which was Ants in Your Pants.
Yeah, and
It was amazing.
I'm sorry we don't have it to play today because
I can do the ooh, ants in your pants, ooh, ooh, ants in your pants. You wiggle, you giggle, you jiggle, you dance. Ooh, you got ants in your pants.
just for you radio audience out there, Douglas is wiggling and jiggling, and
not
it's amazing.
it's
It's
not
amazing the moving parts on his body.
It's not exactly Mona with the children.
No,
but
it wasn't.
But ants in your pants, whatever sells.
I guess you kind of progressed, or
Yeah,
It's hard to. It's well, but to be perfectly frank, Ants in Your Pants made me more money than anything.
is that right?
Well, it was on television for 10 years. It was huge.
See, there you go.
Back to what we were saying before, the novelty song seems to take over.
Well, and the other thing is that, and I ended up performing for kids for almost 15, 20 years as a result of that. And I learned very quickly that children were like the best audience in many ways because they were immediate. If it worked, it worked. If it didn't work, it didn't work.
Better than the drunks, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Eh?
And
Not that we do love the drunks. Now, don't get me wrong.
But no, it was quite wonderful to perform for kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
The innocence of the kid.
Yeah.
rewarding.
I remember following. Just sorry if I can just run with this a little bit. We had a six-nighter one time. I think it was up in Brampton, and they gave us Thursday night off because the Good Brothers were coming in the Thursday night to probably to finance the rest of our week at the bar. Anyway, we get there on Friday to set up again, and the guy is so bloody happy that you guys are there. And you know how he measured the success of the night by how many glasses he broke. So you guys must have been rocking that Thursday night, because
guess.
Thursday nights in those days were ladies' nights, and that's when the same bar we also did another week there, and the Thursday that week was a male stripper named Mr. Tease who was coming in for ladies' night. I don't know if you remember this guy or not.
No.
He used to stir the drinks with
No.
So he got as it turns out we thought we were gonna have a Thursday night off, and around, I don't know, 7, 8 o'clock Thursday night, I get a call at home from the bar owner. He said apparently Mr. Tease was arrested the night before and he's in jail. Would you guys mind coming and filling in? And so we show
Mr.
up
Tease.
for Mr. Tease. So we show up and the bar is jammed with women. There is not a man in sight except these 4 skinny little bluegrass musicians who are getting up on stage and setting up. The audience has no idea that Mr. Tease was arrested. They thought perhaps I was Mr. Tease. I don't know what they thought, but anyway, I told the woman in the front row what was happening, and I guarantee within 7 minutes the bar was empty.
No, you didn't stir their drinks, eh?
I did not stir their drinks. I did it with my mind. So I know that Douglas John and the Goods have written a song, and can someone tell me the 30-second version of how you guys got together to write a song?
Yes, a mutual friend and colleague, a guy named Michael Francis, sent me up to write a song with Brian and Bruce.
When was this?
This had been in the late 80s, at some point, maybe the early 90s. I can't really remember.
Yeah, Michael was he produced 2 of our albums in the 80s, and that was when the introduction was made, the connection.
And so I went up to, I think it was Aurora.
That would
where
be Bruce's
Bruce
place,
lived,
yeah.
and he lived on a golf course.
Yeah.
And we were down in the rec room, and you could look out at the golf course, and you, Brian, were late.
Oh, not like me.
You didn't show up, and we waited and waited, and I hung out, and then you showed up, and you came bursting through the door and said, "I want to write a song about a car."
And that's what we did.
And we did. We wrote this.
Oh, that's fantastic. So we got a couple more songs lined up here. When we come back, I'm curious about your TV appearances, gentlemen, but let's listen to these next 2 songs. That was Algoma 69, recorded by Whiskey Jack a few years ago, live on the floor at Orchard TV Studios. Orchard TV, Orchard Sound is Dave and Adam Ferry, and they've moved up to the Owen Sound area. They're now called Big Bay Sound, and I visited their studio not very long ago, and it's awesome. If you're looking to go up and record someplace for a day or 2, you have to share a bed with Adam, but otherwise it's a pretty good place. It's I don't know if they have a lot of bedrooms up there to put you up, but if you're going up for the day, it's a pretty terrific place and fully equipped. They can film you, they can record you. It's just great. You're listening to CIUT-FM 89.5. Our show is Canadian Country Music Legends Live. We're going to be playing at the Regent Theatre in Picton on June 15th, 2018. The stars of the show will be Canadian music legends, the Good Brothers. They're sitting with me. Two of them are sitting with me right now, Brian and Larry Good. And to my right is the world-famous Douglas John Cameron, the lead singer and the guitar player for Whiskey Jack. And we're just sitting here just having a pretty cool old time talking about Canadian music. I'm curious, did you... Whiskey Jack was... we were regulars on the Tommy Hunter Show back in the 80s, and... after we did our years there, then they turned around and they sold those episodes to the Nashville network, and so we were kind of on TV for quite a few years there, and we milked that. Believe me, we milked it big time.
I remember you guys.
Yeah,
on
well,
that.
thank you very much. Yes, actually, that Stompin Tom.
You were almost the house band.
Well, bless your heart for that, but. Stompin Tom told me years later that during his retirement he'd sit on Friday nights and watch the Tommy Hunter Show, and that's when he became fans of us, and that's kind of how we ended up with a relationship with him over the years. So anyway, it was a pretty terrific experience. We got to hang out with Al Cherney and Don and Leroy and Tommy and Red Shea was on the show at that time.
That's right.
And anyway, did you guys get to do it?
Oh, yeah. We did the Tommy Hunter Show on several occasions. Not as many times as you guys, but we were there, and it was a great experience. He surrounded himself with some fabulous musicians through the years.
Bob Lucier on steel.
Bob Lucier was on steel, and Joey Howe played with him for a while, too. And, of course, Red Shea, as you mentioned.
Yes.
Red's brother, Les Pouliot, was
the producer. That's right.
And
Joan Tassoni was the director.
Tassoni was the director. It was quite an accumulation of
did they
talent.
have money in those days?
And CBC was footing the bill.
I'll tell you.
They had the money.
You know, Roy Acuff would come up and he'd bring all 8 musicians.
Yeah, that's right.
Imagine that today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Conway Twitty.
And all his 8 musicians.
And then of course there was Tommy's Suits.
The suits. They had an entire room for
full
the suits.
of Tommy's suits. As a matter of fact, Bruce's sons, the Sadies, bought some of those suits at auction.
Oh, wow.
CBC over on Mutual Street had an auction of some of Tommy's old suits. Right. Well, the Sadies were in there like a dirty shirt, no pun intended.
Yeah. Did they fit? Did those suits fit?
Well, they had to be. They were. Those boys are tall.
Yeah.
And Tommy's tall guy.
Right.
Just a couple of nips and tucks,
right.
if I may say so.
Right, in just the right places, no doubt.
Yeah.
Did you get to play the Don Messer Show? Are you old enough to be part of that?
No, we were kids, but I never did get to. We watched it.
Sure, we all watched it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Don Messer Jubilee.
And Ronnie Prophet Show.
We did the Ronnie Prophet Show. We did the Ian Tyson Show. Ian had the I think the summer replacement for Ronnie Prophet.
Right.
But all those Toronto.
Okay. And how about
Family Brown?
Family Brown, yes, yeah.
That was another
How
one.
about My Pet Juliet? Did you?
No, we never
did.
did.
Any of you sleep with her by any chance?
No. But I used to fantasize about her after the hockey games.
Right. Okay, very
Remember
good.
She came on after the hockey.
I think you and a lot of other young
12-year-olds.
Now, were you 12 when you were on the Festival Express with Janis Joplin?
You would think so. No.
And tell me, did you have an encounter with her?
Yeah. Well, it was a train. You know, it's a train.
So you had a lot of time.
There wasn't a lot of cars. There was. I always like to say there was a jam car.
Yes.
One of the jam cars was electric jam. The other was an acoustic jamming car. They had the dining car. They had the equipment car, of course. All the sleeper cars, and the most important one was the rehab car.
Right.
But it was quite an experience. Well, look, the band, the Grateful Dead, 10 years after, Janis Joplin, Tom Rush was on there. Eric Anderson was there. Buddy Guy, and I'm leaving out
Ian and Sylvia.
Ian and Sylvia, the Great Speckled Bird.
Right.
Charlebois from Quebec.
Yeah.
And
you were kids.
And we were James and the Good Brothers. We were kids, and the only reason we were on there, I'll be honest with you, is because our manager at the time, Eaton and Walker, Kenny Walker and Thor Eaton, they managed us. They found us in the Penny Farthing down in Yorkville. We were playing for chili and lemonade. And they walked in and said, do you want a management deal? We went the next day to their office. We signed a deal with people we didn't even know. We didn't care because we had nothing anyway. Yeah. And they said, you sign this deal, you'll be able to, we're going to have you open for Grand Funk Railroad. Imagine, at Maple Leaf Gardens. So we made the deal. And because they were the ones who put on that party, that train party,
right.
That's why we got on it.
Wow.
And that sent us to San Francisco for our first album.
We could spend an entire show just talking about that trip, I'm sure. We're running. We're just running out of time here.
I never thought we'd run out of time here and still have more to say.
No, I know. No, it's tons of stuff. I'm wondering. We have, besides the show on the 15th, Whiskey Jack is going to be playing August 3rd as the Stratford Summer Music Festival. We play there pretty much every year, and it's very special this year because the artistic producer, John Miller, is retiring this year, so we're pulling out all stops, and we're bringing in the one and only Cindy Church to join Whiskey Jack, and she will be singing with us on August 3rd, and we're particularly pleased to be invited to the second annual Stompin Tom Festival in Skinner's Pond, Prince Edward Island.
Oh, nice.
Beautiful.
And so we're going down there to July 1st, Canada Day. We're going to be headlining that on July 1st. And again, we are bringing Cindy in, and she's going to sing Margot's Cargo.
Oh, nice.
And she's going to sing Confederation Bridge, correct, Douglas? I think those are the two. And probably more because, as we all know, she's one of the best female country singers in the country. So anyway, can you put on Three Chord Johnny, which is the second song that I gave you? And then we'll come back and we'll say goodbye to everybody. Okay, that's Three Chord Johnny, a great song by Douglas John Cameron. And
Well done.
boy, we've had some great fun, eh, guys?
We sure have.
Larry and Brian Good, thank you very much for driving all the way down here from Balm Beach and Beaton, Ontario. Douglas John came all the way over from Riverdale in Toronto. Thank you, Douglas John Cameron, for being my guest here today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike, for engineering this craziness. I hope we were organized enough to keep it flowing and all of that. Thanks to Ken, the program director here. And if you want a show just like this, folks, all you got to do is pony up some bucks and donate some money to this fine station. Let's keep her going. My name is Duncan Fremlin. I play banjo with a band called Whiskey Jack, and we're going to be in Picton on June 15th. So hope to see you there.
And we're going to be with them.
You bet. See you next time.